Hi everyone. So as James says, I'm Becki, I'm the fundraising director at Sightsavers. I'd like to say thank you to Helen for talking about our campaign, which is very lovely. It's always nice to hear somebody talk about the good parts and not the actual really shit bits that we don't talk about. So I've been at Sightsavers for about 5 years. I've been fundraising for 15-ish years. And actually, I don't think a lot has changed in the approach that we've been taking towards things. So what I've been thinking about, skip that one, is could we do better? Obviously, I've been thinking a lot over recent months about whether we could do things differently, could we do things better? I'm sure we've all been thinking about it. We're operating in a very different environment. I think the public don't love us anymore. They certainly don't love talking to us on the telephone. We've got a new regulator who actually doesn't seem to love us very much either. And then there's the dreaded FPS, which is obviously coming next year, and we're all grappling with what it's going to mean, how do we deal with it. And so what I've been thinking about is actually, I don't think we need to be different, but I just think we need to be the best that we can possibly be. I think we need to stop kidding ourselves. Actually, what donors want are monthly mailings asking for money over and over again, because actually, we convince ourselves that the Christmas appeal is just one appeal, even if it's got one mailing and a reminder, and then maybe another reminder, but that's just the one, so that's all right. I think the donors are beginning to see through that slightly. So when I was asked to do this, I thought, yeah, why not? It'll be fine. Loads of stuff to talk about. And we've had some great things today from lots of different people. But actually, I really struggled. I think one of the reasons I struggled is you can speak to my agencies, and actually I'm fairly underwhelmed by most things and quite cynical. But there's a lot I admire from a technical point of view or from a creative point of view, but actually what I really wanted to do was talk about something that spoke to me individually. So I went to the IFC in October, I'm sure some of you might have been there, and I listened to Amanda Palmer tell her story. And for those of you that weren't there, Amanda talked about her struggles as a street performer and moving from a street performer to a musician, and eventually going on to raise over $1 million for her album through Kickstarter. And actually what struck me about this, other than thinking if I could apply it to my musician husband, because actually that would be really handy, was her commitment to her audience. What she talked about all along was the years that she'd spent talking to her audience, finding her crowd and really engaging them. So to give some context about what I've chosen, this is my son, Stanley. Stanley's 6. He doesn't have any brothers or sisters. He's got a kitten. He's going to be getting a puppy. They're totally substitute children. And that's what I want to talk about, because actually if things had been different, Stanley would have been one of 4. But they weren't, and things didn't work out. And actually, miscarriage isn't something that we talk about, because we're British, and we don't talk about things like that. Because I've just stood here and told you that I've had 3 miscarriages, and you're all now feeling slightly awkward and thinking, God, what is she going to tell us next? So, what the Tommy's campaign is all about is about the fact that miscarriage is quite misunderstood. And I think actually it's perfectly natural to misunderstand something that you haven't been through. And I can't count the number of times that somebody said, oh, is it just the one? No, you didn't want any more then. And I think, it's fine. We all say things without thinking about them. And I tell myself that, there are loads of great reasons for being an only child. He gets all my time. He gets all my money. He doesn't have to share his toys. But actually, I think what we don't talk about is the guilt and the sadness that I feel for not being able to give him what is perceived as the norm and having siblings. And actually, that's why the Tommy's campaign really spoke to me. So it was launched about a year ago. It was launched nationwide across Facebook and Twitter, and was aimed at getting people to talk about their experiences. Essentially, a storytelling program, which is what we've heard about a lot today already. And they launched it for the following reasons. That out of the 6,000 women surveyed, 85% said they didn't think people understood. 80% said they felt like a failure. And nearly 70% felt they couldn't talk to their best friend. And I know how isolating it can be. So what I want to do is just play you one of the stories from their website.
I think for our first miscarriage, I would have benefited from somebody saying to me, tell your wife how you feel. And don't say you're fine. And don't say, well, I'll be all right. You have to be honest. We went through a day or two where I was just carrying on. And then I thought, I can't anymore. Let's just have the conversation. Let's both just cry about it. I think Jen found it so useful to know that I was feeling. Because otherwise, just isolate. I think she would have just felt completely isolated. Just having bridged that gap of being open and honest then about something so deep and so big, it's opened the gates to me being honest and open about everything now. And our relationship has benefited drastically from that. We've now had 4 miscarriages and 3 in a row. Looking back, it's staggering at how many people completely just avoided it with me. Dads have the same emotions, they have the same experience except from the physical side of miscarriage. It has to be a focus on both mum and dad for dealing and coping with miscarriage. You can go into a pub and a quarter of the pub will have gone through miscarriage. So finding someone that has experienced it isn't hard. And I think to be able to talk about that with your mates is absolutely priceless.
Just realised I'm running out of time. So they got a bit of press coverage, they got a few celebrities, all of those things. But actually, what I think is it's not about the results and it's not about what they achieve. For me, it's about what we can take from this and what we can learn from their campaign. And I think there are a few key lessons. I think, firstly, don't be arrogant. I don't think anyone's cause in this room is going to appeal to everybody. And I think we need to realise that. And I think we need to think about, actually, who is your target audience? And that video for me really stuck out because that was the hard audience to get. That was the men that really don't want to talk about their feelings. Secondly, I think focus your message. Tommies do a lot of great work, but actually that campaign was really focused on one very specific thing that they did. I think going back to what Amanda Palmer said at the IFC, it's about finding your crowd. It's about nurturing them, however big or small they are. And I think the more time you put into them, the more it will pay back. And also, again, it's a message that we've had a few times today, but let them tell your story, let them talk about it. And then actually, once they feel part of that community and part of that sense of being, they're more likely to give when you finally get round to asking them. And I think lastly, if nothing else, I'm hoping that I've helped their campaign by sharing my story today. Thank you.